Lena Carter stood triumphant in a Detroit courtroom, her not guilty verdict ringing out after months of fighting false theft charges from her white boss, Victor Grayson. The jury smiled, the judge nodded, and for one sweet moment, justice felt real. Then the doors crashed open mid-cheer, FBI agents stormed in, badges flashing, and the room froze. "Victor Grayson, you're under arrest for fraud," one barked. Lena's relief twisted into dread, her win a mirage. What war would this spark? Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from, and if you stand for truth against corruption, hit like and subscribe for more gripping tales. Lena Carter never thought she'd end up here, her life unraveling in the shadow of Detroit's jagged skyline. At 35, she'd built something solid, a career that gleamed like a rare jewel against the city's rust and ruin. She'd started at Grayson Enterprises 12 years ago, a black woman with a fresh accounting degree and a fire in her gut, taking the bus from her cramped apartment in Brightmoor to the company's sleek downtown tower. Back then, it was just data entry, her fingers flying over keys late into the night, fueled by black coffee and dreams of more. She'd sacrificed sleep, missed birthdays, and waved off dates to climb that ladder, one grueling rung at a time. By 32, she'd made it to senior accountant, overseeing budgets worth millions, her name whispered with respect in boardroom corners. She thought she'd cracked the code, beaten the odds stacked against her skin. Victor Grayson, the CEO, was the sun around which the company orbited. A white man in his 50s, he wore tailored suits that cost more than Lena's rent and carried a smile that could charm a snake. To her face, he was all praise, clapping her on the shoulder after presentations, his voice booming. "Lena's our star, keeps us shining." But she'd overheard the truth once late at night when she'd lingered to finish a report. Through a cracked office door, his drawl had turned venomous, muttering to a VP, "She's our diversity poster child, nothing more. Let her crunch. Numbers, but don't get too cozy." The words had stung sharp as a slap, but Lena swallowed them down. She needed the job, needed the paycheck for her daughter Jade's school books and their little house on the west side. So she kept her head low, her work flawless, proving them wrong with every balanced ledger. It all shifted 6 months ago, on a muggy July afternoon when the air conditioning in the tower sputtered and died. Victor's assistant, a wiry blonde, named Cheryl, had dropped an email in Lena's inbox, casual as a lunch invite. "Boss needs a profit report by Friday. Dig deep." Routine stuff, or so Lena thought. She pulled the files, her desk lamp casting long shadows as she sifted through spreadsheets until her eyes burned. At first, it was just noise, numbers humming along like always. Then she spotted it, a thread snagging in the fabric of Grayson Enterprises finances. A project listed as Midtown renovation showed $10 million allocated, but the expenses didn't match. Invoices for concrete and steel led to dead ends, companies with no addresses, no tax records. She traced the funds, her pulse ticking faster with every click, and found them funneled into a tangle of accounts labeled consulting fees. Shell companies, she realized, her stomach twisting. Millions were vanishing into thin air, and the trail pointed straight up. Lena didn't hesitate. She compiled her findings, a neat stack of printouts and a memo typed in crisp black font, and marched to Victor's corner office the next morning. The room smelled of leather and cigar smoke, his desk a fortress of mahogany. He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers as she laid out the discrepancies, her voice steady but firm. "Something's off, Mr. Grayson. These numbers don't add up, and I can't sign off until we investigate." She expected shock, maybe gratitude. Instead, his eyes narrowed, a glint of ice beneath the charm. "You're mistaken, Lena," he said, his tone smooth as silk but cold enough to frost glass. "Those are approved transactions. Don't dig where you're not wanted. You've got a bright future here, don't throw it away over nothing." The warning hung heavy, a blade tucked inside a velvet glove, but Lena couldn't unsee what she'd found. It wasn't nothing. It was theft, massive and deliberate, and she wouldn't let it slide. She kept digging, quiet as a ghost, working after hours with her office door locked. Every night, she peeled back another layer, linking payments to offshore banks, names she couldn't pronounce. She saved it all on a thumb drive, her insurance against whatever storm might come. But Victor was watching. A week later, on a Wednesday when the sky hung low and grey, 2 cops burst into her office, their boots thudding against the carpet. White men, both of them, with jaws set hard and eyes that didn't bother hiding contempt. "Lena Carter, you're under arrest for theft," one growled, yanking her arms behind her back. The cuffs bit into her wrists as they hauled her out, her chair spinning in their wake. Her co-workers gaped, some turning away, others muttering under their breath. "Knew she couldn't be trusted," one whispered, loud enough to carry. "Typical." Another sneered, the word a dagger in her spine. Cameras flashed as they shoved her into the squad car, her face plastered across Channel 7 by nightfall. Accountant caught stealing $50,000 from boss. The charge was a lie cooked up overnight. They claimed she'd siphoned petty cash, $50,000 traced to an account with her name on it. A forgery so blatant it screamed setup. Her bank records were clean, her life modest, but the evidence was slick, papered over with Victor's fingerprints if anyone cared to look. They didn't. The precinct buzzed with smirks as she sat in a holding cell, the air thick with mildew and disdain. "Should have known your place," an officer muttered, tossing her a stale sandwich through the bars. Her lawyer, a wiry public defender named Malik Jones, fought for her, but the system leaned hard against her skin. Preliminary hearings dragged on, each one a parade of Grayson's paid witnesses, from Cheryl swearing Lena acted sneaky to a janitor claiming he'd seen her pocket cash. Lies, all of it, but they stuck like tar. Lena's trial became a circus, the courtroom a battleground where her blackness was the real defendant. Victor sat in the gallery some days, his suit pristine, his smirk a silent taunt. She'd spent months building her defense, Malik digging up scraps of truth while she sat awake at night, Jade's worried eyes haunting her. The jury, half white and half skeptical, finally came back after 6 hours of deliberation. Not guilty. The words hit like a lifeline, her chest loosening for the first time in forever. She'd beaten the frame up, exposed the cracks in Victor's story. Malik clapped her back, the judge's gavel a drum roll of freedom. She stood, legs shaky but head high, ready to walk out into a world that might finally see her right. Then it happened. The FBI stormed in, a thunderclap shattering her. Fragile win, their voices barking Victor's name as the cuffs clicked on him instead. Fraud, they said. A federal case bigger than her little fight. Her victory twisted, souring in her throat. She'd thought she'd won, thought the gavel's echo was the end. But it wasn't. Victor's eyes locked on hers as they dragged him. Out, a promise flickering in their depths. This wasn't over. The courtroom emptied, whispers chasing her like wasps, and Lena stepped into the humid Detroit air, her not guilty verdict already a ghost. She'd survived the setup, but the real war was just igniting, a blaze that could swallow her whole. Lena Carter stepped out of the Detroit courthouse into a wall of noise and hate, the late August sun beating down on her like a spotlight she couldn't escape. Her not guilty verdict still echoed in her ears, a fragile shield she'd fought. 6 months to claim, but the air outside crackled with something darker. She adjusted her purse strap, her navy blazer clinging to her sweat-damp skin, and scanned the crowd spilling across the cracked concrete steps. Reporters jostled for position, their microphones thrusting forward like spears. But it wasn't just them. Dozens of strangers pressed in, their faces twisted with fury, holding signs scrawled in jagged red ink. "Thief! Liar! Grayson's innocent!" Her stomach lurched. Who were these people? Had Victor orchestrated this circus so fast? She took a shaky step forward, her heels clicking against the stone, when a brick sailed through the air, missing her head by inches. It smashed into a courthouse window behind her, glass splintering with a sound like gunfire, and a voice bellowed from the mob, "You don't belong here!" The words landed like a punch, raw and racial, stripping away the courtroom's thin veneer of justice. Lena froze, her breath catching as she spotted her daughter Jade, 16 and wide-eyed, standing near the curb with her backpack slung over one shoulder. Jade had insisted on coming today, skipping algebra to see her mom walk free. Now her brown eyes glistened with tears, her braids trembling as she clutched her phone, recording the chaos. Lena's heart sank. What kind of victory was this if her own child had to witness such venom? The crowd surged closer, a sea of pale faces and clenched fists, their chants growing louder, uglier. "Go back where you came from," one shouted, a man with a buzz cut and a faded Pistons jersey, spit flying from his lips. Another, a woman in a sundress, waved a sign reading, "Justice for Grayson," and screamed, "She framed him!" Lena's chest tightened, her mind racing. How could they believe that? She'd spent months proving Victor's lies, his fraud, only for this pack to swallow his narrative whole. Then she saw it, a cluster of them wearing matching black caps with GE, stitched in gold Grayson Enterprises logo. Paid protesters, she realized, her blood boiling. Victor hadn't wasted a second turning her win into a public lynching. She grabbed Jade's hand, pulling her close as they edged toward the parking lot, the mob's jeers ringing in their ears. "Mom, why are they doing this?" Jade whispered, her voice small against the roar. Lena squeezed her fingers, forcing calm she didn't feel. "Because some people can't stand the truth, baby." But the truth felt flimsy now, a paper boat sinking in a storm. She'd beaten the theft charge, walked out free, but this wasn't freedom. It was a target painted on her back, bold and red, courtesy of a man who'd rather burn her down than face his own crimes. What kind of justice let the real crook twist the knife like this? They'd almost reached the car, a beat-up Toyota with a dented fender, when her phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it, fumbling for her keys, but it buzzed again, insistent. Jade climbed into the passenger seat, her face pale, and Lena slid behind the wheel, locking the doors with a trembling hand. She pulled out the phone, expecting Malik's number, maybe a warning from her lawyer. Instead, it was a text from an unknown sender. "Check the news." Her gut twisted, a cold prickle crawling up her spine. She switched on the radio, the static crackling before a smooth anchor's voice cut through. "Breaking news. Victor Grayson, arrested earlier today on federal fraud charges, has been released on bail just hours after his dramatic courtroom exit." The real estate mogul spoke to reporters moments ago. The broadcast shifted, and Victor's voice filled the car, slick as oil and twice as toxic. "I've been wronged," he said, his tone dripping with false hurt. "This whole thing is set up by a disloyal employee who betrayed my trust. I'll fight this, and I'll ruin the rat who dared cross me." Lena's hands clenched the steering wheel, her knuckles whitening. He didn't name her, but he didn't have to. Everyone knew. Jade stared at her, eyes wide. "He means you, doesn't he?" Lena nodded, her throat dry, unable to lie. Victor was out free to wield his wealth and wrath, and she was the bullseye. The drive home was a blur, the city's grey streets streaked with heat haze, her phone vibrating non-stop against the dashboard. She didn't look until they pulled into their narrow driveway, a modest two-story house with peeling paint and a sagging porch. Jade bolted inside, her sneakers thudding up the stairs, while Lena stayed in the car, steeling herself. She opened her messages, and the flood hit. Unknown numbers, dozens of them, spitting venom. "You'll pay, black bitch. Thieving trash. Watch your back." Her address flashed across one screen, a screenshot from some dark corner of the internet. 1457 Elmwood Saint. Let's pay her a visit. Her breath hitched, panic clawing at her chest. How did they get this? Who was feeding the beast? She stumbled into the house, locking the door behind her, the deadbolts click a hollow comfort. Jade sat on the couch, knees pulled to her chest, staring at her own phone. "Mom, look at this," she said, holding it up. A video looped on the screen, shaky footage from outside the courthouse, Lena dodging the brick as the crowd roared. The caption read, "Justice fails again, Grayson's the victim." Comments poured in below, a cesspool of slurs and threats, each one a blade twisting deeper. "They're saying I should have died," Lena whispered, her voice breaking. Jade's lip trembled, and she threw her arms around her mom, burying her face in Lena's shoulder. "I hate them," she sobbed. "I hate all of them." Lena held her tight, stroking her hair, but her mind spun. The verdict was supposed to be the end, a clean break from Victor's lies. Instead, it was a spark, igniting a firestorm she couldn't outrun. Victor's release wasn't just a legal hiccup, It was a declaration of war, and he'd rallied an army of hate to fight it. Her phone buzzed again, another text. "You're nothing." She deleted it, but the words lingered, seeping into her bones. The crowd's faces flashed in her mind, their rage a mirror of every slight she'd swallowed at Grayson Enterprises, every smirk from cops who'd cuffed her without proof. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about her blackness, her audacity to stand up. What would Victor do next to bury her? The night stretched long, the house creaking under a humid breeze, every shadow a threat. Lena sat by the window, curtains cracked, watching the street. A pickup truck rolled by, slow, too slow, its headlights glinting off the glass. Her pulse raced, but it kept going, taillights fading into the dark. She didn't sleep, couldn't. Not with Jade upstairs and Victor's promise echoing in her skull. Her victory was gone, stolen by a man who'd turned her freedom into a cage. The FBI had his fraud, but she had his hate, and it was growing, wild and unstoppable. How far would he push this before it broke her? All right. What do you think of this mess Lena's landed in? Drop a number 1 in the comments if you're raging at how fast Victor flipped the script, or a number 2 if you think Lena's tougher than this crowd of cowards. If you're rooting for her to smack back against this injustice, hit that like button and subscribe to catch every twist coming her way. Tell me, should she run or fight? Now, picture this. Lena's clinging to hope, but what happens when someone she trusts stabs her in the back? Stick around to find out. Lena Carter's world was crumbling, the edges of her life fraying like a worn tapestry under the weight of Victor Grayson's wrath. 3 days after the courthouse mob, she sat in her kitchen, the air thick with the scent of burnt toast and desperation. Jade slept upstairs, her soft snores filtering through the ceiling, a fragile reminder of why Lena couldn't break. The threats hadn't stopped, her phone a constant hum of venom, each message a splinter under her nails. Die slow. 1. Red. Your kid's next, another promised. She'd unplugged the landline after a midnight call hissed, "We know where you sleep." The leaked address had turned her home into a bullseye, and Victor's televised vow to ruin the rat played on loop in her mind, his smirk a ghost haunting her every move. She needed help, a lifeline beyond Malik's overworked hands, or the FBI's distant raid on Victor's empire. Her mind snagged on Paul Hensley, a name from her early days at Grayson Enterprises. Paul, a wiry white man with graying hair and a smoker's rasp, had been her mentor back when she was just a data clerk, his desk piled with ledgers and cigarette butts. He'd taught her the ropes, shown her how to spot a fudged expense report, even slipped her coffee on late nights. "You've got a head for this, Lena," he'd said once, his grin crooked but warm. He'd quit 5 years ago, muttering about creative accounting he wouldn't touch, and vanished into the city's sprawl. If anyone knew Victor's dirty tricks, it was Paul. Could he still be her anchor in this storm? Lena tracked him down through an old work email, her fingers trembling as she typed, "Paul, it's Lena Carter. I need your help. Grayson's after me." His reply came fast, a single line. "Meet me at Rusty's Diner, 8 tonight. Bring nothing." Relief flooded her, sharp and fleeting, like a gasp after holding her breath too long. She left Jade with a neighbor, a stout woman named Mrs. Tillman who'd promised to lock the doors tight, and drove through Detroit's neon-lit streets, the Toyota's engine rattling under her grip. Rusty's sat on a corner near the river, its windows fogged with grease, the parking lot a patchwork of potholes and flickering lamps. Paul waited in a back booth, his frame hunched over a chipped mug, a stack of manila folders beside him. His face was older, lines carved deep, but his eyes sparked with something she hoped was loyalty. "Lena," he rasped, sliding the folders toward her as she sat, the vinyl seat squeaking under her weight. "Heard about your mess. Grayson's a snake, always was. I kept records when I left, stuff he thought I'd burn." She opened the top folder, her pulse quickening at the sight of scribbled notes, bank statements, and emails, all detailing Victor's shell games from years back. Payments to ghost vendors, inflated project costs, the same rot she'd uncovered. "This could bury him," she whispered, her voice trembling with possibility. Paul nodded, leaning closer, his breath sour with coffee and regret. I should have spoken up sooner. Let me testify, Lena. We'll nail him together. Her chest loosened, a knot of fear unraveling. Was this the break she'd been clawing for? They talked for an hour, Paul sketching out Victor's old scams, how he'd bullied staff into silence, his racism a quiet blade behind closed doors. Called me a bleeding heart for training you, he admitted, his laugh bitter. Said black folks couldn't handle the big leagues. Lena's jaw tightened, the memory of Victor's diversity star jab stinging fresh. She gathered the folders, ready to call Malik, when Paul's gaze darted to the window, his fingers twitching on the table. You trust me, right? He asked, too sudden, too soft. She nodded, but a chill pricked her spine. Why did he look so nervous? Before she could ask, he stood, muttering, "Bathroom," and shuffled off, leaving the folders behind. Lena flipped through another page, her mind racing with courtroom visions, when the diner's door banged open. Two men stormed in, broad-shouldered and mean-eyed, their boots thudding against the linoleum. One wore a stained jacket, the other a skull tattoo creeping up his neck, both reeking of sweat and malice. "Carter!" the tattooed one barked, spotting her. She bolted upright, clutching the folders, but they were on her in seconds. The first grabbed her arm, twisting it hard, while the second slammed her into the wall, her head cracking against peeling paint. "Nosing where you don't belong, huh?" he snarled, his breath hot and rancid. "Uppity black trash thinks she's smart." The words hit like fists, each syllable laced with hate, as the other sneered. "Grayson sends his regards." Pain bloomed in her ribs as a punch landed, sharp and deep, stealing her air. She swung back, nails raking the tattooed man's cheek, drawing blood, but he laughed, a wet, ugly sound. "Feisty," he spat, slamming her again, the folders scattering, like leaves across the floor. The diner's few patrons shrank away, heads down, as the men tore into her bag, tossing her keys into a corner. "Tell your brat we're coming," the first growled, his fist hovering for one last blow before they bolted, the door slamming shut behind them. Lena slid to the ground, gasping, her blazer ripped, her side throbbing like a drumbeat. Paul was gone, his mug still steaming on the table. Where had he run to? She crawled to the folders, gathering them with shaking hands, when a scrap of paper slipped free, tucked inside the last one. Handwritten in Paul's jagged scrawl, "Victor paid me more, sorry." Her stomach dropped, a sick, hollow plunge. He'd sold her out, lured her here for this ambush. The files were real, but the promise was a trap, his loyalty a lie she'd swallowed whole. She staggered outside, the humid night air slapping her bruised face, and found her Toyota trashed, tires slashed, windshield a spiderweb of cracks, scrawled in dust across the hood. "Back off or Jade's next." Her knees buckled, the threat a noose tightening around her heart. Jade, her baby, now a pawn in Victor's game. Lena limped to a payphone across the lot, her coins clinking. As she dialed Malik, her voice raw. "Paul betrayed me, they jumped me. They know where Jade is." Malik cursed, promising to send help, but the line felt thin, a thread stretched to snapping. She hung up, clutching the folders, her only weapon now. The diner's neon sign buzzed overhead, casting her shadow long and jagged, a woman battered, but not broken. Paul's stab hurt worse than the fists, a wound she hadn't seen coming, but it lit a fire in her gut. Victor thought he could scare her silent, use her daughter as leverage. He'd misjudged her. How much more would he take before she struck back? She hobbled home in a borrowed cab, the driver's radio humming low, every bump jarring her bruised ribs. Mrs. Tillman met her at the door, eyes wide at the sight of her torn clothes and swelling cheek. "Lord child, what happened?" she gasped, but Lena waved her off, rushing upstairs. Jade slept, oblivious, her face peaceful against the pillow. Lena sank beside her, the folders clutched to her chest, her breath ragged. Victor's goons were closing in, Paul's betrayal a fresh scar, and her not guilty verdict a distant memory. The war was here, and it was uglier than she'd ever imagined. What would it cost to keep Jade safe? Lena Carter woke to a dawn that felt like a bruise, the sky over Detroit swollen with purple clouds, her body aching from the diner ambush. Her cheek was a mottled map of purple and blue, her ribs a dull throb with every breath. But the fire in her chest burned hotter than the pain. Jade's face, peaceful in sleep, had kept her anchored through the night, a silent vow to fight. Paul's betrayal stung, his scrawled apology a taunt, and the thug's threat against her daughter looped in her skull. Back off, or Jade's next. Victor Grayson thought he'd broken her, thought his goons could silence her with fists and fear. He was wrong. She'd been battered, not buried, and those folders Paul left behind were her ammunition now. She moved fast, adrenaline masking the hurt. By noon, she sat in a cramped coffee shop on Woodward Avenue, the air thick with roasted beans and tension, facing a journalist named Tariq Evans. He was a wiry man in his 40s, his notepad scarred with ink, his reputation built on exposing Detroit's underbelly. Lena slid Paul's files across the table, her voice low but steel-edged. Victor paid Paul Hensley to set me up. These prove he's been stealing for years. I need this out there now. Tariq's eyebrows shot up as he skimmed the papers, bank transfers and cryptic emails painting a portrait of fraud. This is dynamite, he muttered, scribbling notes. You sure you want to poke this bear? Lena's jaw tightened. He's already clawing me. I'm done hiding. Tariq worked quick, his article hitting the web by dusk. Ex-employee betrays whistleblower in Grayson scandal. It named, Paul detailed his double-cross and hinted at Victor's deeper crimes. The folder's contents teased just enough to spark outrage. Lena didn't stop there. She dug into her own stash, emails from her time at Grayson Enterprises, buried on that thumb drive she'd kept like a talisman. One caught her eye, a terse note from Victor to a VP. Move the Midtown funds, Carter's nosy. She paired it with Paul's records, a timeline of theft stretching back a decade, and emailed it to Tariq with a single line. Blow it wide. Open. Her hands shook as she hit send, but her resolve was iron. Could she turn Victor's own words against him? The story exploded online, hashtags like Parnes Grayson lies trending as Detroit's chatter turned to fury. Lena's next move was bolder. She called a community meeting at the old rec center on Livernois, a brick box with chipped paint and a leaky roof, the only place she could afford on short notice. Word spread through texts and flyers, and by 7 that night, the room was packed. Folding chairs groaning under a crowd of neighbors, activists and strangers drawn by the buzz. Jade stood by her side, chin high despite the shadows under her eyes, her presence a quiet strength. Lena stepped to the mic, her bruised face a badge of survival, and laid it bare. Victor Grayson framed me for theft because I found his secrets, she said, her voice cutting through the hum. He sent men to beat me, threatened my daughter, all to keep his millions. These files prove it. She held up Paul's folders, the crowd's gasps a ripple through the air. She didn't flinch as she read aloud, Victor's emails a confession in his own smug tone, the numbers a rope tightening around his neck. He thought I'd break, she finished, her gaze sweeping the room. But I'm still standing and he's still lying. The applause erupted, fierce and jagged, hands clapping, voices shouting, "Take him down!" A woman in the front row, her hair streaked with Gray yelled, "We've got your back!" Lena's throat tightened, hope flickering like a candle in a draft. Malik was there too, his nod sharp as he whispered, "This could force a warrant." By midnight it did. Tariq's follow-up piece, loaded with her leaks, hit the judge's desk, and a warrant froze Victor's accounts, a legal jab that felt like a win. For a moment, Lena stood tall, the crowd's roar lifting her above the chaos. Had she finally turned the tide? That night, she and Jade crashed on Mrs. Tillman's couch, their own house too exposed after the address leak. Lena's eyes were drifting shut, the day's triumph a rare warmth, when a crash shattered the silence. Glass exploded inward, a fiery glow flooding the room as a Molotov cocktail smashed through the living room window. Flames licked the curtains, smoke curling thick and black as Jade screamed, "Mom!" Lena lunged, dragging her daughter behind the sofa, her heart hammering against her ribs. The blaze spread fast, clawing up the walls, the heat a beast snapping at their heels. Mrs. Tillman stumbled in, coughing, her nightgown singed, and Lena yelled, "Out! Now!" They scrambled through the back door, the night air a cold slap as the house roared into an inferno. Sirens wailed in the distance, Fire trucks rolling up as neighbors poured from their homes, faces lit by the orange glow. Lena clutched Jade, her daughter's sobs shaking them both, the folders still tucked under her arm, singed but intact. The fire chief, a stocky man with a buzz cut and a Grayson Enterprises pin on his jacket, strutted over, his lips curling into a smirk. "Looks accidental," he drawled, eyeing Lena with contempt. "Faulty wiring, probably. Happens in these old places." Her blood boiled, the lie so blatant it burned hotter than the flames. "You're one of his," she spat, stepping closer, her voice a blade. This was Victor. He shrugged, turning away, but his grin said it all. She'd won nothing. They stood in the street, ash raining down, the crowd from the meeting now, a scattering of stunned faces. Jade clung to her, whispering, "Why won't they stop?" Lena had no answer, her triumph gutted in minutes. The warrant, the leaks, the support, all torched by Victor's retaliation, his reach slithering through. The city like smoke. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a text from an unknown number. "Next time you burn." She stared at the words, her bruised hands trembling, the night swallowing her fleeting victory. The fire trucks doused the blaze, but the real inferno was Victor's hate, and it was only growing. What price would she pay for fighting back? This is getting wild, right? Drop a number 1 in the comments if you think Lena's courage is unstoppable, or a number 2 if you're stunned Victor's hitting back this hard. Should she keep pushing, or is she in too deep? If you're gripped by this battle against corruption, smash that like button and subscribe for the next chapter. Tell me, can she trust anyone after this? Now imagine Lena catching her breath, thinking she's safe, only to face a new trap snapping shut. What's Victor cooking up next? Stay tuned to see. Lena Carter stood in the smoldering wreckage of Mrs. Tillman's backyard, the dawn sky over Detroit, streaked with ash and regret, her arms wrapped tight around Jade. The fire had gutted the house, leaving blackened beams and melted glass, a scar on the block that mirrored the one in her chest. Her folders, singed but intact, lay on the grass beside her, a lifeline she'd barely salvaged from the blaze. Jade's tear-streaked face pressed into her shoulder, her quiet sobs a rhythm, a fear Lena couldn't soothe. The fire chief's smirk lingered in her mind, his accidental ruling a slap from Victor Grayson's long reach. Her triumph at the rec center, the warrant freezing his accounts, all felt like ashes now, scattered by a Molotov cocktail and a system that refused to see her. They couldn't stay here, not with Victor's threat. "Next time you burn," branded into her skull. Lena borrowed Mrs. Tillman's phone, her own lost in the chaos, and called Malik. "We need somewhere safe," she said, her voice hoarse from smoke and exhaustion. "He's not stopping." Malik cursed, his usual calm fraying. "I've got a friend with a motel near 8 Mile, cheap, off the grid, get there now." She nodded, though he couldn't see, and bundled Jade into the Toyota, borrowed back from a neighbor who'd towed it after the diner attack. The drive was silent, the city's morning hum muffled by their shared dread, every passing car a potential threat. The motel, a squat brick box with a flickering sign reading Starlight, loomed ahead, its parking lot empty save for a rusted pickup. Lena checked in under a fake name, her cash trembling in her hand, and locked the door behind them, the room's stale air heavy with mildew and despair. Jade curled up on the sagging bed, her backpack clutched like a shield, while Lena paced, her bruised ribs aching with every step. She'd thought the warrant would slow Victor, that the community's roar would shield her. Instead, it had lit a fuse, and now her home was gone, her daughter shaken, her fight a spark in a hurricane. She sank into a chair, the vinyl creaking under her weight when a sharp knock rattled the door. Her heart leapt, hands fumbling for the lamp as a weapon, but a voice called, "Miss Carter, Child Protective Services." Lena froze, dread pooling in her gut. "CPS. Here?" She cracked the door, peering out at a white woman in a grey blazer, her clipboard crisp against the motel's grime, flanked by a uniformed cop with a jaw like concrete. "I'm Sandra Webb," the woman said, her tone clipped, her eyes raking over Lena with a flicker of disdain. "We received a report of neglect. Your daughter's living conditions, this fire, it's concerning." Lena's stomach twisted, her voice rising. Neglect? My house was torched last night. We're hiding because of it. Sandra's lips pursed a thin line of judgment. That's what we're here to assess. Single black moms often slip under pressure, you know. We need to ensure Jade's safety. The words hit like a brick, racial venom cloaked in bureaucracy, and Lena gripped the doorframe, her nails digging into wood. This is Victor, she spat. He's behind this. Sandra shrugged, unmoved. Anonymous tip. Open the door or we'll escalate. Lena stepped back, letting them in, her pulse a drumbeat of fury and fear. Jade sat up, eyes wide, as Sandra prowled the room, jotting notes on the stained carpet, the single bed, the peeling wallpaper. The cop loomed by the door, his hand resting. On his belt, a silent threat. This isn't suitable, Sandra said, her pen scratching like a claw. We may need to place Jade in temporary care until you stabilize. Lena's breath caught, panic clawing her throat. You're not taking my daughter, she said, stepping between them, her voice a growl. Sandra's gaze hardened. Resist and it's permanent. We'll be back with a court order. They left, the door clicking shut, but the air stayed. Thick, their threat a noose tightening around Lena's neck. She called Malik again, her words tumbling out in a rush. CPS just showed up. They want Jade. It's him, I know it. Malik's silence stretched, then he sighed. Grayson's. God pull, I'll get legal aid, fight this, stay put. Lena hung up, her mind spinning. She dug through Paul's folders, finding a memo from Victor to a board member. Grease the right palms, problems vanish. Proof he'd bribed officials, maybe even CPS. She faxed it to Malik from the motel office, her hands shaking, and by noon, legal aid filed an emergency motion, citing coercion. A judge, a rare ally, blocked the removal, granting Lena a reprieve. She exhaled, clutching Jade, relief washing over her like rain. Had she dodged the worst? The victory lasted hours. That evening, as dusk painted the motel windows in shades of rust, Lena stepped outside for air, Jade napping inside. She leaned against the Toyota, its slashed tires patched but shaky, when headlights flared. A cop car roaring into the lot. It swerved, its bumper slamming into her hood, metal crunching as she dove aside, her elbow scraping pavement. The officer leapt out, a white man with a buzz cut and eyes like flint, his badge glinting in the fading light. Stay in your lane, he snarled, spitting on the ground near her feet, his voice thick with contempt. Next time I don't miss. He peeled out, tires squealing, leaving Lena sprawled in the dust, her car a crumpled wreck, her reprieve a lie. She staggered back inside, blood trickling from her elbow, her breath shallow and ragged. Jade stirred, murmuring, Mom? Lena forced a smile, hiding the tremble in her hands. Just a bump, baby. Go back to sleep. But sleep was a stranger now, her mind a whirl of CPS's cold stare, the cop's racial sneer, Victor's invisible hand pulling every string. The motel wasn't safe. The system wasn't safe. Nothing was. She'd fought off the removal, clung to Jade by a thread, only to find Victor's next blow waiting in the shadows. Her phone buzzed. Another unknown number. You can't hide. She stared at the screen, her bruised body screaming, her resolve a flicker in the dark. The warrant, the community, the legal win, all dust against his power. What would he rip from her next? Lena sat by the window, curtains pinched shut. The motel's neon buzz a faint pulse against the night. Jade slept, her breaths soft, but Lena's eyes burned, scanning the lot for headlights, for threats. The cop's spit still stained the ground outside, a mark of the city's betrayal, and Sandra's words echoed, single black mums often slip. It wasn't just Victor now. It was the whole rotten machine, greased by his money, grinding her down. She'd thought safety was a place, a moment, but it was a mirage dissolving with every step she took. The folders lay beside her, their edges curling from fire and sweat, her only weapon in a war she couldn't win alone. How long could she hold on before it all collapsed? Lena Carter sat on the motel's lumpy mattress, the room's dim bulb casting jagged shadows across the walls, her bruised elbow still oozing from the cop's hit and run. Jade slept fitfully beside her, Her breaths uneven, the motel's thin, blanket twisted around her legs. The night outside buzzed with cicadas and distant traffic, but inside silence pressed down, heavy as wet concrete. Lena's eyes traced the cracks in the ceiling, her mind a tangle of CPS's cold threats, the fire's hungry roar and Victor Grayson's text, "You can't hide." The cop's spit-soaked warning lingered, a taste of the city's rot. And she knew the Starlight's flimsy lock wouldn't hold back his next move. She needed more than folders and legal scraps now. She needed a shield. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, a low hum cutting through the stillness. She snatched it, expecting another taunt, but the screen flashed a name: Derek Vance, FBI. Her pulse quickened, memories of the courtroom raid flickering back, those agents storming into Cough, Victor. She'd seen Derek then, a tall black man with a stern jaw and eyes that didn't flinch, barking orders as the room froze. He'd vanished after, a ghost in the chaos, but now his number glowed, a lifeline or a trap. She answered, her voice a whisper. "Yeah?" His tone came through, clipped and urgent. "Lena, it's Agent Vance. We need to meet, alone. Corner of Grand River and Cass, 1 hour." She hesitated, the motel's walls closing in. "Why me?" Derek's pause was brief, his words measured. "You've got pieces we need. Grayson's bigger than you know." Lena slipped out, leaving Jade with a note. "Back soon, stay locked in." The drive was a blur, Detroit streets glinting wet from a late drizzle, her Toyota's patched tires groaning under the strain. She parked under a flickering street lamp, the intersection a hollow stretch of shuttered shops and graffiti-stained brick. Derek waited in an unmarked sedan, its engine idling, his silhouette sharp against the tinted glass. She climbed in, the air inside thick with leather and tension, his badge glinting on the dash. He didn't waste time. "Grayson's not just a fraud," he said, sliding a thick file toward her. "He's tied to a cartel, white supremacists with deep pockets. They've been laundering through his company for years. Your Midtown find cracked it open." She opened the file, her breath catching at photos of men in hoods, bank logs with sums that dwarfed her discoveries, and a grainy shot of Victor shaking hands with a tattooed thug, the same skull design she'd seen at the diner. Derek leaned closer, his voice low. "We've got him on fraud, but this ties him to hate crimes, murders. We need your evidence, everything you've got to seal it. Help us and we'll protect you, Jade too." Lena's chest tightened, hope flickering against the weight of her fear. Protection. Real protection from the FBI. She pulled her thumb, dry from her pocket, its plastic warm from her grip, and handed it over, her voice steady. "Emails, dates, accounts, it's all there." Derek nodded, tucking it away. "Smart move. We'll move you to a safe house tomorrow. This ends soon." She drove back, the promise of safety a fragile thread, her mind spinning with cartel. Shadows and Derek's stern assurance. The motel loomed ahead, its neon sign a dull pulse, and she slipped inside, locking the door behind her. Jade stirred, murmuring, "You okay?" Lena brushed her hair back, forcing calm. "Yeah, baby, things might get better." She lay awake, the file's images burned into her retina. Victor's smirk now a mask for something uglier. Sleep tugged at her, a rare mercy, when her phone rang again, Derek's number flashing. She answered, dread pooling fast. His voice crackled tight with panic. "Lena, our safe house got hit, torched. 2 agents dead, files gone. Grayson's people knew." Her stomach dropped, the room spinning as his words sank in. The cartel, Victor's invisible army, had struck before she'd even moved. She bolted upright, checking the window, the lot dark and still. "How?" She rasped, her throat dry. Derek's breath was ragged. "Leak maybe, or they've got eyes everywhere. Stay put, I'm sending a car." He hung up, the line dead, and Lena's hands shook, the promise of safety ashes before it began. She paced, her bruised ribs screaming, when a thud hit the door, sharp and wet. She crept closer, peering through the peephole, and gagged. A pig's. Head blood-smeared and eyeless, slumped against the frame, a note pinned to its snout. "You're dead, snitch." Lena stumbled back, her knees buckling, Jade waking with a gasp. "Mom, what's that smell?" she cried, scrambling to her side. Lena pulled her close, shielding her eyes, the stench of blood seeping through the crack. "Don't look," she whispered, her voice breaking. The folders and thumb drive were her weapons, but they'd painted a target bigger than she'd imagined. Victor's reach wasn't just Detroit. It was a network of hate, and the FBI's shield had crumbled, in flames. She grabbed her phone, texting Malik. "FBI hit, we're exposed." His reply was instant. "Hold tight, I'm coming." But tight felt like a noose, the motel a coffin waiting to close. She dragged the dresser against the door, its legs scraping the floor, a flimsy barricade against the night. Jade huddled on the bed, her eyes wide, the pig's head a silent scream between them. Lena's mind raced, Derek's words looping. "Grayson's bigger than you know. The cartel, the hoods, the murders, all tied to the man who'd framed. Her burned her out, hunted her daughter. Her not guilty verdict was a pebble against a mountain, and this alliance, her last gasp, had blown up in her face." Headlights flashed outside, a car rolling slow and her breath hitched. Friend or foe, she clutched Jade, the folders beside her, their edges curling from sweat and fire. The FBI's offer was hope dangled, then snatched, and Victor's shadow grew monstrous, swallowing her whole. The car stopped, engine cutting off, and footsteps crunched gravel, deliberate and close. Lena's heart pounded, her bruised hands gripping Jade's, the room a cage with no exit. Derek had promised protection, but 2 agents were dead and she was next. The pig's head stared through the door, a grotesque warning, Victor's laugh echoing in its silence. She'd given everything, risked everything, and the war had only deepened, its claws sharper, its reach wider. The footsteps paused, a shadow, stretching under the doorframe, and Lena braced, her resolve a flicker in the dark. What had she unleashed by trusting the FBI? Lena Carter crouched in the motel room's dim glow, her back pressed against the dresser she'd shoved to block the door, Jade trembling beside her. The pig's head outside oozed a dark puddle under the frame, its stench seeping through the crack, a grotesque echo of Victor Grayson's threat. "You're dead, snitch." Headlights had flared and faded in the lot, the footsteps retreating after an agonizing pause, but Lena's pulse still thundered, her bruised hands slick with sweat. Derek's call about the torched safe house, 2 agents dead, rang in her ears. The FBI's promise of safety a crumbled lie. She'd sent Jade's safety to the wind, trusting them, and now the war had claws, reaching beyond Detroit's grime, to her core. She couldn't stay here, not with the motel's thin walls and Victor's cartel watching. Jade's wide eyes, glassy with fear, cut deeper than any bruise. "Mom, they're gonna find us," she whispered, her voice a thread about to snap. Lena smoothed her daughter's braids, her own chest tight. "Not if I can help it, baby." She dialed her sister, Tanya, in Chicago, a 3-hour drive across state lines. Tanya picked up on the second ring, her voice groggy but sharp. "Lena, it's 2 in the morning, what's wrong?" Lena swallowed, her throat raw. "I need you to take Jade, now. It's not safe here." Tanya's pause was heavy, then firm. "Get her to me. I'll lock the place down." Lena hung, up, her decision a stone sinking in her gut. Could distance shield her daughter from this nightmare? They packed in silence, Jade stuffing clothes into her backpack, Lena clutching the singed folders like a lifeline. She borrowed Malik's number from her phone's memory, texting, "Taking Jade to Chicago, cover me." His reply buzzed fast, "I'll tail you, keep eyes out." She slipped the motel key under the door, the pig's head glaring as they crept to the Toyota, its crumpled hood a testament to the cops' rage. The engine sputtered but caught, and Lena peeled out, the city's sodium glow fading in the rear view as I-94 stretched ahead, a black ribbon under a moonless sky. Jade stared. Out the window, her silence louder than any cry, and Lena gripped the wheel, her bruised ribs aching with every mile. 3 hours felt like a lifetime, every shadow a threat, every car a hunter. They reached Tanya's row house in Englewood at dawn, the Chicago skyline a distant smudge against a gray horizon. Tanya met them at the door, her hair in a messy bun, her eyes fierce with worry. She hugged Jade tight, then Lena, her grip a steel band. "You look like hell," she said, ushering them inside. The house smelled of cinnamon and old wood, a sanctuary with barred windows and a double-bolted door. Lena exhaled, tension easing a fraction as Jade sank onto the couch, her backpack a shield against her chest. "She'll be safe here," Tanya promised, her voice a vow. Lena nodded, clinging to that hope, and drove back alone, the folders beside her, her heart split between relief and dread. Had she bought Jade a reprieve? The call came that afternoon as Lena pulled into a gas station. Halfway back to Detroit, the pumps hum a dull drone. Tanya's number flashed and Lena answered, expecting a check-in. Instead, her sister's voice broke through, jagged with sobs. "They came, Lena. They came here." Lena's blood turned to ice, her hand freezing on the nozzle. "Who? What happened?" Tanya's breath hitched, words tumbling fast. "4 men, masks, busted in an hour ago. Beat me bad, trashed the place, yelled, 'Where's the girl?' and 'Black bitch can't hide.' Left me bleeding, but Jade's okay, hiding in the closet." Lena's knees buckled, the phone slipping in her grip. "They wrote 'no hiding' on the wall," Tanya added, her voice cracking. "They knew she was here." Lena floored it back to Chicago, the Toyota's engine screaming, her mind a storm of guilt and rage. She burst into Tanya's house, the door hanging off its hinges, glass crunching under her boots. Tanya sat on the floor, her lips split, her left eye swelling shut, a rag pressed to her cheek. Jade huddled beside her, pale and shaking, her eyes hollow. The living room was a battlefield, furniture overturned, walls gouged with slurs in black marker. "No hiding, Grayson's law." Lena dropped to her knees, pulling them both close, her own bruises forgotten as Tanya rasped, "They wanted her, said it's a message." Victor's thugs had tracked Jade across state lines, their racist fury a whip cracking through her family. How had they known so fast? She called Malik from Tanya's cracked landline, her voice trembling but sharp. "They hit my sister's place. Jade's a target now." He cursed, promising cops, but Lena knew better. The Detroit precinct's spit still fresh in her memory. She hung up, her resolve hardening, and drove Jade back to Detroit, Tanya insisting she'd follow with stitches and a gun. The motel was out, so Lena crashed at Malik's apartment, a cluttered walk-up near the river, its windows fogged with age. Jade slept on his couch, her breath shallow, while Lena sat at the kitchen table, the folders spread before her, their edges curling tighter. Her phone buzzed, a news alert. Victor on TV, live from a press conference, his suit crisp, his grin a blade. "She'll regret crossing me," he said, his eyes boring through the screen. "I protect what's mine." Lena's blood boiled, his words a match to her fury. She'd sent Jade away, thinking distance would save her, but Victor's reach was a web, sticky and vast, snaring her family with every move. Tanya's battered face flashed in her mind, Jade's terror a weight she couldn't shake. She paced, the apartment's floor creaking under her steps when headlights swept the street below. A crowd gathered, their shouts rising through the glass. "Go back to the gutter." Black caps glinted in the dusk. Grayson Enterprises. Logo a swarm of bees. Pickets waved signs. "Carter's a liar. Grayson's the victim." Lena's stomach sank. Her address leaked now a rallying cry for his hired bigots. They chanted outside Malik's door, their voices a wall of hate, and Jade woke, clutching her mum's arm. "They found us again," she whispered, her voice breaking. Lena peered through the blinds, her breath fogging the pain. The mob's faces twisted with rage, their slurs a chorus of venom. Victor's TV taunt echoed, "She'll regret it." And she saw his hand in every shout, every cap, every fist raised against her. She'd thought Chicago was a bunker, a shield for Jade, but it was a mirage, shattered by masked men and racial hate. Malik burst in, his coat dusted with flour from a late-night run, his eyes wild. "They're blocking the street. We're trapped." Lena's hands clenched, her bruised knuckles whitening, the folders her only weapon against this tide. Victor wasn't just hunting her, he was breaking her piece by piece, family by family. How much more could she lose before she snapped? She pulled Jade close, the girls trembling a mirror of her own, the chants outside a drumbeat of war. The pig's head, the fire, the cop's ram all paled against this. Her sister beaten, her daughter hunted, her fight a spark in a hurricane. Victor's empire wasn't just money. It was hate, and it had teeth, tearing through her life with every breath. The folders sat on the table, their secrets a whisper against his roar, and Lena's resolve hardened, a steel rod in her spine. She'd sent Jade to safety, only to drag her back into the fire. The breaking point was here, and it was hers to face. What would it take to stop him? Lena Carter stood at Malik's kitchen table, the folders spread like a battle map under the apartment's flickering bulb, her hands trembling with a mix of fury and fatigue. Outside, Victor Grayson's hired mob chanted their hate, their voices, a jagged saw cutting through the night. Go back to the gutter. Jade curled on the couch, her eyes red-rimmed, her backpack a shield against the chaos spilling from the street below. Tanya's battered face haunted Lena, the Chicago attack a fresh wound, Victor's thugs scrawling no hiding across her sister's walls. The pig's head, the fire, the cop's ram, all paled against this relentless tide, her family torn, open by his racist wrath. She'd sent Jade away for safety, only to pull her back into a trap, and now the war was at their door, loud and unyielding. She couldn't wait for Malik's promises or Derek's crumbling FBI shield. Lena needed to hit back, hard and loud, before Victor crushed her completely. She remembered a name from a late-night scroll, a hacker called Ghost, a shadow in Detroit's underground who'd once bragged about cracking corporate vaults. Malik. Knew him, a twitchy kid with a laptop and a grudge, and after a hushed call, Ghost slunk into the apartment, his hoodie swallowing his thin frame, his eyes darting like a cornered fox. "You want Grayson's dirt?" he rasped, plugging into Malik's router. "I'll get it, but it's 50 grand. Lena's stomach sank, her savings torched with Mrs. Tillman's house, but she thrust the folders forward. "This is my pay. Take it down." Ghost's fingers flew, a blur of code and caffeine, and within hours he'd breached Victor's private servers, pulling files that made Lena's thumb drive look like a footnote. Cartel ties bloomed on the screen, wire transfers to men with swastika ink, emails ordering cleanups in coded venom. One photo froze her blood, Victor grinning beside a hooded figure, a burning cross glowing behind them. Ghost leaked it all, a digital flood crashing across the web, hashtags like Bacha Grayson Cartel exploding as the stock ticker for Grayson Enterprises plummeted, red numbers bleeding out his empire. Lena watched the chaos unfold, her breath shallow, the mob outside faltering as their phones buzzed with the truth. Had she finally struck a killing blow? The feds moved fast, Derek texting her at dawn, "Raids hitting now, stay low." Sirens wailed across Detroit, agents swarming Victor's tower, his accounts locked tighter than a vault. Protesters flipped, sides crowding the streets with signs screaming, "Justice for Lena and Grayson's a monster." News vans rolled in, anchors breathless as they aired Ghost's leaks, the photo of Victor with the cross a damning centerpiece. Lena stood at Malik's window, the mob gone, replaced by a swell of support, voices chanting her name. Jade hugged her, a rare smile breaking through, and Malik clapped her shoulder, his grin wide. "You did it, Lena, he's cornered." For a fleeting moment, the city felt hers, the tide turning, her counter-strike a roar that drowned Victor's hate. Was this the end of his reign? The victory held for a day, a fragile sunrise over a battered life. Lena let herself breathe, sipping. Coffee in Malik's cluttered kitchen, Jade sketching in a notebook, the TV humming with praise. "Heroic whistleblower exposes tycoon," the anchor gushed, her face plastered across the screen, bruised but defiant. Then the hammer fell. Victor's lawyers hit the airwaves, their suits crisp, their voices smooth as silk. "These leaks are fabricated," one declared, holding a stack of papers. "Ms. Carter's a desperate liar, forging evidence to save her skin." Lena's cup slipped, coffee splashing the table as they aired a polygraph test. A stern man in a lab coat, swearing she failed every question, she's the fraud. The broadcast was live, a courtroom of public opinion, and Lena's stomach churned as the polygraph squiggles danced, a lie detector rigged to bury her. Ghost cursed, That's bullshit. I pulled real data. But the damage raced ahead, the crowd outside shifting, their cheers souring to boos. Trash hit Malik's window, a soda can bursting against the glass, and shouts rose anew. Faker! Grayson's innocent. Lena stumbled back, her chest tight, the city's love flipping to scorn in hours. Malik's phone rang, a contact. At the station whispering, "They're saying you staged it all, cops won't touch him now." Her victory dissolved, a sandcastle under a wave, Victor's spin rewriting her truth into a smear. She fled with Jade to the Toyota, the streets a gauntlet of glares and garbage, her name a curse on every tongue. They reached a gas station near the freeway, its lights harsh against the dusk, and Lena slumped against the pump, her breath ragged. Jade clung to her, whispering, "Why do they hate us again?" Before Lena could answer, a crack split the air, a sniper's bullet grazing her arm, blood blooming on her sleeve as she dove behind the car. Jade shrieked, tires squealed, and a black van peeled away, its taillights winking into the night. Lena clutched her arm, pain searing through her, and her phone buzzed. A voice call from a blocked number. Victor's drawl slithered through, low and lethal. "Next one's through your skull." She staggered to her feet, blood dripping onto the pavement, Jade's sobs a knife in her gut. The bullet had missed by inches, a warning shot from a man who'd turned her triumph to ash. She tore a strip from her shirt, binding the wound, her hands shaking as she drove them back to Malik's, the city a blur of hostile eyes. The folders, ghosts, leaks, the raids, all undone by a lie detector and a lawyer's grin. Victor's cartel flexing its muscle with a near assassination. Her arm throbbed, her resolve fraying, but her fury burned brighter, a coal in the dark. He'd taken her win, her safety, her family's peace, and now her blood. How much more could he steal before she broke? Malik met them at the door, his face pale, the TV replaying the polygraph farce. "They've got the public," he said, his voice grim. "He's untouchable again." Lena sank onto the couch, Jade beside her. The bullets graze a red scream against her skin. The protesters were back, their signs sharper now. "Carter's a con." Victor's voice lingered. "Next one's through your skull," a promise she couldn't shake. Her counterstrike had shaken his empire, brought the feds, rallied the streets, only to crash into his wall of lies and power. The war was hers, to lose, and it was slipping fast. What would it take to fight a monster who wouldn't fall? This is insane, isn't it? Drop a number 1 in the comments if you're shocked Victor flipped Lena's win this fast, or a number 2 if you think she's still got a shot to take him down. Is she a hero or a fool for pushing this far? If you're hooked on this roller coaster of justice and betrayal, hit that like button and subscribe for the next drop. Tell me, can she claw back from this sniper shot? Now, picture Lena, bleeding, cornered and ready to face the courtroom again. What happens when the FBI storms in with cuffs? You'll see soon. Lena Carter sat in Malik's apartment, her arm throbbing under a makeshift bandage. The snipers graze a raw stripe of red against her skin. Jade slept fitfully on the couch, her face etched with exhaustion, the echoes of Victor Grayson's threat. "Next one's through your skull," a ghost in the room. The TV looped his lawyer's polygraph lie. The city's cheers turned to jeers, trash still clinging to the window pane from the mob's rage. Ghost's leaks had shaken Victor's empire, sparked raids, but his counterstrike, a bullet and a smear, had flipped her victory into quicksand. She'd fought too hard, lost too much to let it end here, bleeding and cornered. The folders beside her, edges charred and curling, whispered one last chance. The courtroom. Victor's fraud trial loomed, a federal case sparked by the FBI's. Raid and Lena's subpoena landed that morning. A crisp envelope slipped under Malik's door. She'd testify, her evidence the spear to pierce his lies if she could survive the walk to the stand. Malik drove her to the courthouse. The Toyota rattling through Detroit's gray dawn, Jade safe with Tanya, now stitched and armed in Chicago. The building loomed, its stone steps slick with mist, a crowd buzzing like wasps, their signs a blur of "Grayson's innocent" and "Carter's a fraud." Lena stepped out, her blazer hiding the bandage, her chin high despite the ache in her ribs. Malik squeezed her hand, his voice low. "You've got this. Truth's on your side." She nodded, clinging to that thread. and climbed the steps, their shouts a wind she pushed through. Inside, the courtroom hummed with tension, the air thick with polished wood and nervous sweat. Victor sat at the defense table, his suit a sheen of wealth, his smirk a blade honed by the polygraph win. The jury, a mix of pinched faces and skeptical eyes, watched her take the stand. Her oath a quiet vow under the judge's stern gaze. The fee. Prosecutor, a lean woman named Erica Holt, began, her voice sharp as glass. Miss Carter, tell us about Grayson Enterprises' finances. Lena steadied her breath, her bruised hands clasped and spoke, her words a river breaking a dam. I found millions missing, funneled through fake projects. Midtown renovation, 10 million gone to shell accounts. I reported it and Victor framed me for theft. She laid out dates, emails, the thumb drive's secrets, her voice rising with every fact, the jury leaning in, riveted. Erica paced her, heels clicking, and held up a printout. Victor's terse note. Move the funds, Carter's nosy. Is this from the defendant? She asked. Lena nodded, her gaze locking on Victor, his smirk faltering for a heartbeat. Yes, I pulled it myself. The room buzzed, murmurs rippling through the gallery, and Erica pressed, What happened when you confronted him? Lena's throat tightened, the memory sharp. He warned me off, said I'd ruin my future. Then I was arrested, cuffed in front of my team, called a thief because I'm black and wouldn't stay quiet. The jury shifted, some eyes narrowing, others softening. Her truth a stone dropped in still water. Victor's lawyers scribbled, their faces tight. But Lena kept going, linking every dollar to his greed, her testimony a blade carving through his facade. Was this the moment he'd crack? The doors crashed open mid-sentence, a thunderclap silencing the room, and Derek Vance stormed in, his FBI badge flashing like a beacon. Agents flanked him, their boots pounding the floor, and the courtroom froze, pens dropping, breaths held. Victor Grayson, Derek barked, his voice a hammer, you're under arrest for racketeering and hate crimes. He thrust photos forward, blown-up prints from Ghost's leaks. Victor grinning beside that hooded figure, Lena's burned house a charred backdrop. His cartel-funded attacks on Ms. Carter, arson, assaults, all to silence her. The judge, a grey-haired woman with a hawk stare, banged her gavel, but the chaos swelled. Victor's lawyers leaping up, shouting objections, the jury gaping at the images. Lena's heart raced, relief flooding her as cuffs clicked on Victor's wrists, his face paling, his smirk gone. Derek met her eyes, a nod of grim triumph, and she exhaled, the stand a lifeline she'd clung to. The gallery erupted, reporters scrambling, the air electric with shock. Erica Holt grinned, whispering, We've got him now. And Lena felt the tide shift, her testimony the spark. Derek's raid the flame. Victor twisted in his seat, his glare boring into her, a promise of vengeance even in chains, but she held firm, her bruised arm a badge of survival. This was it. The end of his reign, her truth laid bare for all to see. Had she finally won? The moment shattered as a juror stood, a wiry man with a pinched mouth, his voice slicing through the din. She's lying, he shouted, pointing at Lena, his face red with fury. This is a setup, all of it. Grayson's no criminal, she's the fraud. The room stilled, a gasp sucking the air dry, and Lena's stomach dropped, dread clawing back. The judge snapped, Sit down, sir. But he kept going, I've seen the polygraph, she's playing us. Whispers spread, the jury fracturing, some nodding, others glaring at her. The photos suddenly suspect. Victor's lead lawyer, a slick man with a shark's grin, seized it, rising smooth as silk. Your Honor, this outburst proves reasonable. Doubt? We move for a mistrial. Lena's breath caught, her victory slipping like sand through her fingers. Derek's raid a spark snuffed by a planted voice. The judge's gavel fell, her voice stern. Order! We'll recess to assess. Lena stumbled off the stand, Malik catching her arm, his face grim. He's one of Victor's, he muttered, nodding at the juror. Bought or brainwashed? The courtroom emptied, agents hauling Victor out, his smirk creeping back, a snake shedding its skin. She stepped outside, the crowd's cheers now. A confused murmur and a boom shook the air, her Toyota exploding in the lot. glass raining like shards of her hope. She ducked, debris biting her legs. Malik pulling her down as smoke billowed, a final jab from Victor's unseen hand. She crouched in the chaos, her ears ringing, the courthouse steps a battlefield once more. Jade was safe, but the trial teetered. The jurors cry a crack in her armor, the car bomb a scream of Victor's defiance. Derek ran over, his face ashen. "We've got him in custody, but this isn't over." Lena nodded, her arm bleeding anew, the folder's secrets now a double-edged sword. Her testimony had pierced him. The FBI had struck, but the mistrial loomed, and the explosion roared his reply. The war wasn't won, it was splintering, and Victor's hate still burned, even in cuffs. How could she fight a system that bent? For him! Lena stood, her legs shaky, the crowd's eyes a mix of awe and doubt, the wreckage of her car a smoldering tomb. Malik's grip steadied her, but her mind spun, the jurors' shout a poison spreading fast. Victor's smirk as they dragged him away promised more, a beast caged but not tamed. The courtroom had been her stage, her truth a light, only to flicker under his shadow. She'd faced the stand, braved the raid, but the war stretched on, its teeth sharper, its cost steeper. What would it take to bury him for good? Lena Carter stumbled through the courthouse parking lot, her ears ringing from the car bomb's blast. Shards of glass clinging to her torn blazer like bitter stars. Smoke coiled from the Toyota's wreckage, a twisted skeleton of metal and flame. Victor Grayson's parting shot, even as he sat in cuffs. Malik dragged her to his sedan, her legs jelly beneath her, the crowd's murmurs a dull roar against the chaos. Jade was safe with Tanya in Chicago, but the jurors' cry, "She's lying!" echoed louder, the mistrial a noose tightening around her neck. Her testimony had pierced Victor, the FBI's raid had chained him, but his venom still flowed, a river breaking every dam she built. She needed shelter, a breath before his next strike swallowed her whole. Derek Vance caught up as they reached Malik's car, his face streaked with soot, his badge dulled by the blast's haze. "You're not safe here," he said, his voice clipped, eyes scanning the lot. "We've got a safe house off-grid west side. Agents posted, locked tight. Get Jade. We'll move you now." Lena's arm throbbed, the sniper's graze seeping through her bandage, but his words sparked a flicker of hope. A lifeline after the courtroom's collapse. She nodded, her throat dry. "Okay, but she stays with me." Derek's jaw tightened, but he agreed, barking orders into his radio as Malik peeled out, the city's skyline a jagged blur fading behind them. They retrieved Jade from Tanya's Chicago hideout, her sister's stitches stark against her swollen face, her grip fierce as she hugged them goodbye. "Kill that bastard," Tanya whispered, slipping a kitchen knife into Lena's bag, its blade a cold promise. The drive back was silent, Jade's hand in hers, the folders tucked under the seat, their edges brittle from fire and blood. Derek met them at a nondescript house near Detroit's edge, its clapboard walls weathered to a dull gray, windows shuttered tight. Two agents stood guard, rifles slung low, their faces stone as Lena and Jade stepped inside, the air musty with disuse. "You're secure here," Derek said, locking the door, his voice a thin thread of assurance. "We've got eyes on Grayson. Rest, plan." Lena sank onto a faded couch, Jade curling beside her, the quiet a fragile shield. Could this hold against Victor's storm? She spent the day poring over the folders, her fingers tracing Paul's scribbles, Ghost's leaks, her own emails, searching for a final blow. Jade napped, her breath soft, while Lena's mind churned, the jurors shout, the bombs roar, Victor's smirk a carousel of dread. She found it in a tucked-away page, a ledger from Victor's early days, numbers scrawled in his own hand, payments to Patriot Front for security. Dates matched arsons in black neighborhoods, a trail of hate crimes tied to his wallet. Her pulse quickened, a weapon sharper than fraud, and she emailed it to Derek from a burner phone Malik had left, her message blunt. "This nails his cartel to the wall." The reply pinged fast. "Good. We're building. Stay put." She leaned back, the couch's springs creaking, a spark of fight rekindling. Had she found the key to end him? Night fell, the safe house cloaked in a hush, broken only by the wind rattling the shutters, the agent's boots a faint crunch outside. Lena sat by Jade, her daughter's head on her lap, the ledger's weight a quiet victory in her mind. She'd drifted to the edge of sleep, the room's shadows softening when the lights died, a sudden blackout plunging them into dark. Her eyes snapped open, heart lurching as a crash split the silence, the front door buckling under a heavy blow. Jade jolted awake, gasping, "Mom!" Lena shoved her behind the couch, her hands fumbling for Tanya's knife, the blade cold against her palm. Voices barked outside, low and vicious, "End the black bitch." Footsteps pounded, glass shattered, and masked men breached the walls, guns glinting in the moonlight, streaming through broken panes. Lena's breath hitched, her body a coil of fear and fury as she gripped the knife, the room a maze of shadows and screams. 3 figures loomed, their masks stark white, eyes gleaming with hate, one barking, "Where's the brat?" She lunged, slashing at the nearest, the blade catching, his arm blood spraying as he howled. Jade whimpered, tucked tight, and Lena swung again, her bruised ribs screaming, the second man's gun clattering to the floor. Gunfire erupted outside, the agent's rifles answering, but the third thug charged, slamming her into the wall, her head cracking against plaster. "Grayson says hi," he snarled, his fist crashing into her jaw, stars bursting in her vision. She stabbed blind, the knife sinking into his thigh, his scream a jagged roar as he staggered back. The room spun, blood slick on her hands, the air thick with cordite and rage. She barricaded Jade in a closet, shoving a chair under the knob, her voice a rasp. "Stay quiet, baby, please." The attackers regrouped, their shouts a storm, but tires screeched outside, Derek's voice cutting through, "FBI, drop it!" Shots rang, bodies thudded, and agents stormed in, their flashlights slicing the dark, blood pooling on the hardwood. Lena slumped against the wall, her jaw swelling, the knife slipping from her grip as Derek knelt beside her, his face grim. "They're down. You're alive." She nodded, dazed, pulling Jade from the closet, her daughter's sobs a weight. She couldn't lift. Derek's radio crackled, a voice sharp with disbelief. "Grayson's out. Bail posted, some judge in his pocket." Lena's stomach dropped, the safe house a trap sprung shut, Victor's freedom a slap after the bloodbath. Derek cursed, his fists clenched. "We lost 2 more out there." He knew where to hit. Lena's vision blurred, the ledger's triumph a ghost, the agent's bodies a price she'd never meant to pay. Jade clung to her, trembling, the masks hate a brand on their skin. "They wanted me dead," Lena whispered, her voice breaking, the knife at her feet a useless shield. Derek hauled her up, his grip firm. "We're moving you again. This isn't over." They fled in his sedan, the safe house a smoldering ruin in the rear view, Jade's head on her shoulder, the folders clutched tight. Lena's jaw pulsed, her arm bled anew, the night a shroud of loss and rage. Victor's bail was a mockery, his cartel's claws tearing through every wall she hid behind. She'd struck with the ledger, thought it a lock, but the safety was a lie, a slaughterhouse painted as a haven. The agent's blood stained her hands, Jade's terror stained her soul, and Victor's smirk loomed, free and feral. She'd gambled desperate, and the house had burned again. How much more could she bleed before he won? Lena stared out the window, Detroit's lights a smear of cold fire, her resolve a flicker in the wreckage. Derek drove, his silence heavy, the folders her last card in a deck stacked against her. Jade's breath steadied, but her eyes stayed hollow, the attack a scar they'd carry forever. Victor wasn't just a man, he was a hydra, every head. She cut sprouting 2 more, his hate a tide she couldn't stem. The safe house was gone, the agent's dead, and her gambit had brought nothing but pain. The war raged on, its cost a mountain of bodies and tears. What would it take to bury a beast that wouldn't die? Lena Carter sat in the back of Derek Vance's sedan, the engine's rumble a dull pulse under her bruised bones, Jade trembling beside her as Detroit's night swallowed them whole. The safe house lay behind, a tomb of splintered wood and blood. 2 agents dead, their killers' masks a white smear in her memory. Victor Grayson was free again, bailed by a crooked judge, his cartel's claws tearing through her last refuge. Her jaw ached from the thug's fist, Her arm oozed from the sniper's graze, and Tanya's knife rested heavy in her lap, its blade stained with their hate. The folders, singed and battered, sat under her feet, the ledger's hate crime proof. Her final card, but it felt like ash against his unstoppable tide. She couldn't hide anymore, couldn't run. This was her stand, win or die. Derek's eyes flicked to the rear view, his voice tight. "We're out of safe spots, Lena. He's got the city wired." She nodded, her throat raw, the ledger's weight a spark in her gut. "Then we go loud," she said, pulling a burner phone from her pocket, its screen cracked but alive. "Put it all out there, every damn thing." Derek's jaw clenched, but he handed her his own device, FBI secured, and she typed fast. Live streaming to every platform Ghost had cracked, her face a map of bruises under the dashboard's glow. "This is Lena Carter," she began, her voice steady despite the pain. "Victor Grayson's a fraud, a murderer, a racist. He's burned my home, hunted my daughter, killed agents. Here's the proof." She held up the ledger. It scrawled, "Numbers a confession," and read aloud, "Patriot front arsons his money. He's no tycoon, he's a monster." The feed exploded, shares spiking as Detroit's Sleepless scrolled, her words aflare in the dark. Jade squeezed her hand, her eyes wide but fierce, and Lena kept going, streaming the folder's secrets. Paul's notes, Ghost's leaks, every thread of Victor's web. Protesters stirred, their phones buzzing, and within minutes, horns blared, tires screeched, a clash erupting downtown as her supporters met his hired mob. Derek patched the feed. To news stations, his voice a growl. "This goes national, he's done." Lena's chest heaved, the city waking to her cry, but the war wasn't won. It was igniting, a wildfire she'd lit with her own hands. Could the truth outrun his bullets? They ditched the sedan near a crumbling warehouse on the riverfront, its brick walls sagging under years of neglect. The perfect cage for her final play. Malik met them, his coat torn from dodging the mob, a borrowed pistol in his grip. "Streets are a mess," he said, leading them inside, the air thick with rust and damp rot. Jade clung to Lena, her backpack a shield, as Derek set up a perimeter, his radio crackling with agent chatter. Lena streamed again, the warehouse's gloom her stage, her voice echoing off cracked concrete. "He's coming for me," she said, the phone's light harsh on her swollen jaw. "But I'm not running. Look at this, America, this is what he hides." She flipped through the ledger, her blood-smeared fingers trembling, the world watching as Victor's trucks roared closer, their engines a growl in the night. The clash hit fast, protesters swarming the streets outside, their chants a wall of sound. "Justice for Lena!" Victor's goons rolled in, black vans spilling men with bats and guns, their caps glinting with Grayson Enterprises' gold stitch. Glass shattered, fists flew and bullets cracked the air. The warehouse a fortress under siege. Lena ducked behind a rusted beam. Jade crouched low, her breath hitching as shots ricocheted, plaster dust raining like snow. Derek fired back, his agents holding the line, but the mob pressed, their shouts laced with slurs. "Finish her!" She grabbed Malik's pistol, its weight cold and unfamiliar, and shot at a shadow charging the door, the man dropping with a grunt, blood pooling. On the floor, her hand shook, the recoil jarring her bruised ribs, but she fired again, a desperate shield for Jade. The live stream flickered, her phone's battery fading, but the feed held, millions watching as chaos reigned. Protesters clashed with goons, bottles shattering, sirens wailing, the city a battlefield under her name. Derek's voice cut through, "Hold them, we've got backup." But the line buckled, a thug breaching the door, his gun raised. Lena lunged, slamming the pistol's butt into his skull, his body crumpling as Jade screamed, "Mom, behind you!" She spun, too late, as Victor stepped in, his suit pristine, a revolver gleaming in his hand. His eyes burned, a predator's glint, and he snarled, "You'll die for this, you nothing!" The room stilled, Derek pinned by gunfire, Malik bleeding from a grazed arm, the live stream catching every breath. Lena faced him, her pistol steady despite the tremble in her core, Jade's sobs afire in her veins. "You're done," she said, her voice a blade, the ledger at her feet a silent witness. Victor laughed, a wet, cruel sound, and raised his. Gun, the barrel a black eye staring her down. "You think this saves you?" He spat, his finger tightening. She moved, years of survival surging through her, and tackled him, her bruised body slamming his to the ground. The revolver fired, a wild shot cracking the ceiling, and they grappled, her nails raking his face, his fists pounding her ribs. She twisted the gun free, its metal slick with sweat, and smashed it into his temple. Blood spurting as he roared, "You're dead!" He lunged again, his strength a bull's, but Lena rolled, pinning him, her knee on his chest, the pistol at his throat. His blood stained her hands, his eyes wild with hate, and she pressed harder, her voice a hiss. "For Jade, for Tanya, for everyone you burned." Derek shouted, "Lena, stop!" But the war was hers, a mother's rage against a monster's greed. Backup crashed in, agents swarming, cuffs clicking on Victor's wrists as he spat. "This isn't over." Lena staggered back, her pistol clattering, Jade rushing to her side, the live stream dying as the feed cut, the world left hanging. Derek's broadcast had gone national, Victor's empire teetering, but the fight wasn't done. Cops stormed the warehouse, their badges glinting, and Lena braced, relief a whisper in her chest. Then they turned, guns on her, voices barking. "Hands up, Carter, you're under arrest!" Her stomach dropped, confusion crashing through as an officer snarled, "Assault, attempted murder!" Derek lunged forward, shouting, "She's the victim!" But the cuffs snapped on her wrists, cold and biting, the cop's eyes hard with contempt. "Grayson's people run this precinct," one muttered, shoving her toward the door, Victor's smirk rising as they hauled him away, separate but smug. Jade screamed, "Mom, no!" And Malik grabbed her, his face ashen, the folders kicked aside in the dust. Lena stumbled into the night, the warehouse a ruin of blood and broken glass, the protesters' chants fading to shock. Victor's cartel had bought the law, her final stand of victory flipped to chains, her live stream a spark snuffed by his shadow. Derek fought the cops, his voice lost in the clamor, but they dragged her to a squad car, her bruised hands cuffed, her jaw pulsing with pain. Jade's cries echoed, a knife in her heart, and Victor's laugh lingered, a promise unbroken even in custody. The war had peaked, her truth ablaze across the nation, but the system bent for him, snapping her in its jaws. How had it come to this? She sat in the car, the city's lights a cold smear through the window, her resolver ember in the dark. The folders lay scattered, their secrets aired, but Victor's reach was a hydra, its heads endless. She'd disarmed him, bloodied him only to fall to his bought badges. Jade's face, Tanya's stitches, the agent's graves, all fueled her, a fire no cuffs could quench. The war wasn't over, it was shifting, and she'd fight from the ashes. What could stop a man who owned the law? Lena Carter sat in the back of the squad car, her wrists chafed raw by the cuffs, the cold steel a bitter echo of her first arrest months ago. The warehouse faded in the rear view, its shattered walls a graveyard of her final stand. Jade's screams, still ringing in her ears as the corrupt cops dragged her away. Victor Grayson's blood stained her hands, his temple bruised from her pistol's strike, but his smirk lingered, a venomous promise even in custody. The city's lights streaked past, a blur of neon and shadow, her bruised jaw pulsing with every jolt. Her arms graze a dull ache beneath the bandage. The folders lay scattered in the dust, their secrets live-streamed to millions, but the law had twisted. Victor's cartel owning the badges that pinned her now. She'd fought a war, bled for it, only to land here, caged again. The precinct was a hive of noise and grime, the air thick with cigarette smoke and disdain. The same stench she'd breathed when they'd framed her for theft. The arresting officer, a squat man with a buzz cut and a sneer, shoved her into a holding cell, his voice dripping contempt. "Assault, attempted murder. You're done, Carter." She stumbled, her knees hitting the concrete, the door slamming, shut with a clang that rattled her bones. Through the bars, she saw Malik arguing with a desk sergeant, Jade clinging to him, her face a mask of terror and tears. Derek Vance pushed through the crowd, his FBI badge flashing, shouting, "She's a witness, not a perp." But the cops shrugged, their eyes cold, bought by Victor's deep pockets. Lena gripped the bars, her resolve a ember in the dark, her daughter's cry of fire she couldn't quench. How had her truth turned to this? The cell was a coffin, its walls scrawled with faded curses, the bench hard against her battered frame. She sat, her mind replaying the warehouse chaos. Victor's gun in her face, the live streams flicker as she'd pinned him, blood and fury her only weapons. The nation had seen it, her voice a flare against his hate, the ledger's proof a noose around his neck. Yet here she was, locked away, the system a beast that devoured her fight. Hours bled into the night, her head throbbing, when footsteps echoed down the hall, sharp and deliberate. Derek appeared, his face a storm of exhaustion and grit, keys jangling in his hand. "Get up," he said, unlocking the door, his voice a lifeline. "We're moving." She staggered out, confusion swirling as he uncuffed her, her wrists red and raw. "What's happening?" she rasped, her throat dry as sand. Derek shoved a stack of papers into her hands, his eyes fierce. The cartel turned on him, found. His body in the river an hour ago, throat slit, staged as suicide. They're pinning it all on him, fraud, murders, the works. Lena's breath caught, the words a punch to her gut, her mind reeling as he pulled her down the corridor, past glaring cops and Malik's stunned face. Jade rushed to her, burying her head in Lena's chest, and Derek kept moving, his grip firm. "FBI's taking over, you're clear, let's go." They spilled into the precinct's lot, the night air sharp with diesel and disbelief, Malik trailing with Jade in tow. Lena clutched the papers, her eyes scanning the top sheet. A federal memo, Grayson deceased, assets seized, Carter exonerated. Her knees buckled, relief crashing through her like a wave, but suspicion clawed back, a whisper in her skull. Victor dead. After everything, his cartel had cut him loose, a scapegoat to save their own hides. She'd live-streamed his crimes, fought him bloody, and now he was gone. A corpse in the Detroit River, the war flipped in a heartbeat. Derek's sedan waited, engine idling, and he hustled them in, his voice low. They flipped fast, too fast, wanted him silent before he talked. The drive was a haze, the city's pulse a distant thrum, Jade's hand in hers a tether to reality. Lena's mind spun. The ledger's hate crime proof, ghosts leaks, her courtroom stand, all a storm that had broken Victor's empire, only for his own to bury him. Derek pulled into a quiet street near the riverfront, a safe house reborn, its windows dark but secure, agents posted with rifles low. Inside, he handed her a coffee, its steam curling like a ghost, and sat across from her, his face carved with strain. "It's over," he said, his tone heavy. His lieutenants dumped him, framed it clean. "You're free, Jade's safe, charges dropped." She sipped, the burn grounding her, but the twist gnawed, a knot she couldn't untie. Was this justice or a dodge? Malik sank onto a chair, Jade curling beside him, her eyes heavy with relief, the night's terror fading to a dull ache. Lena flipped through the papers, autopsy photos stark against the page, Victor's throat a red slash, his eyes blank. In death? The FBI pinned everything on him, fraud, arson, the agent's murders, a neat bow on a bloody mess. Her livestream had sparked it. Her fight had pushed them to turn, but the cartel's shadow lingered, a beast she'd never see. She'd won, her name cleared, her daughter safe, but the cost was a mountain of scars. Tanya's stitches, the safe houses, blood, her own battered flesh. Derek's gaze met hers, a silent pact, and she nodded, the papers slipping to the table, her hands trembling with the weight of survival. They stayed the night, the safe house a cocoon of quiet, Jade sleeping deep. For the first time in weeks, her breaths a soft rhythm against the stillness. Lena stood by the window, the river a black mirror under the dawn, its current hiding Victor's end. She'd fought a titan, bled him dry, only for his own to finish the job, a reversal that left her reeling. The precinct's cuffs, the warehouses, chaos, all faded to this, a fragile piece built on a corpse. She returned to Malik's apartment days later, the city's hum softer now, the mob gone, the news hailing her as the woman who broke Grayson. Jade snuggled beside her on the couch, cartoons flickering, a normalcy she'd forgotten, and Lena exhaled, her bruised hands still, her war a memory etched in bone. A knock jolted her that evening, sharp against the door's worn wood. And she tensed, old instincts flaring. Malik answered, his brow furrowing as he took a small envelope from a shadow outside, the figure gone before she could blink. He handed it to her, unmarked save for her name in neat script, and she opened it, her pulse quickening. A single slip of paper slid free, its words a chill down her spine. "We're still watching." Her breath stopped, the room shrinking, Jade's laughter a distant echo as she clutched the note, its threat a whisper from the dark. Victor was dead, his empire dust. But the cartel lived, its eyes unseen, its claws poised. She'd won the battle, cleared her name. But the war wasn't over, it was waiting. Lena burned the note in the sink, the flame licking the paper to ash, her hands steady despite the tremor in her chest. Jade glanced over, curious, and Lena forced a smile. "Just trash, baby." She sat back, pulling her daughter close, the TV's glow a thin shield against the night. The FBI had closed the case, Victor's death a full stop, but this was a comma, a pause in a fight she couldn't escape. Her truth had toppled him, her blood had bought her freedom, yet the shadow lingered, a promise of more. She'd faced the stand, the fire, the gun, and won. But at what cost? The river flowed. Outside, silent and deep, and Lena watched it, her resolve a steel thread, ready for whatever came next. Lena Carter's journey teaches us the brutal resilience required to face systemic injustice head-on. Her story reveals that truth, though powerful, often battles a rigged game where wealth and prejudice bend the rules. She uncovered Victor Grayson's fraud and hate, risking everything, her home, her daughter, her life, to expose him, showing that courage isn't just loud, it's relentless. Yet, her victories were fleeting, snatched by corrupt cops, bribed officials, and a cartel's betrayal. Proving that justice isn't guaranteed, even when you're right. It's a stark reminder that racism isn't just slurs or fists. It's woven into institutions, a silent machine grinding down those who dare to rise. Her fight also highlights the cost of standing up. Lena lost safety, family peace, and nearly her sanity, yet she pressed on. Her love for Jade a steel anchor. This underscores that personal stakes can fuel a broader war, turning a mother's grit into a nation's wake-up call. But the cartel's final note, "We're still watching," warns that evil doesn't die easy. Cut one head and another grows. It's a call to vigilance, to recognize that winning one battle doesn't end the fight. Lena's triumph, marred by lingering threats, teaches us to celebrate hard-won gains while bracing for the shadows that follow. So, what's the takeaway? Truth demands sacrifice, and justice demands persistence. How far would you go to right a wrong when the deck's stacked against you? Drop a comment with number 1 if Lena's fight inspires you, or number 2 if you think the system's too broken to fix. Then hit like and subscribe for more raw tales, and share to spark the convo. Thanks for riding this wild journey with us. Here's to strength in the face of chaos and hope that keeps burning no matter the odds.